Welcome to Forbidden News. I'm your host, Alexandra Bruce. In Donald Trump's remarks at Bedminster, New Jersey, following his arraignment in Miami on Tuesday, he addressed the 800-pound gorilla in the room, and he articulated something that's very important to all of us. Take a look.
Don't forget, this persecution is being done by the same weaponized agencies that for 7 years have been running illegal psychological warfare campaigns against the American people, much as if they were trying to destabilize a foreign country. From the Russia hoax, to the no collusion Mueller witch hunt, to impeachment hoax number 1, impeachment hoax number 2, the 51 lying intelligence offers. How about them? They said it's Russia disinformation, and they knew it wasn't, which made about, according to some of the great pollsters that are right here, made from anywhere from a 10 to 17-point difference. And yet we still got more votes than any sitting president in history in the second election.
I've been waiting for over 7 years for a clear statement like this from someone with influence, and to get it from none other than Donald Trump was a great gift to us all. Because knowledge is power. As Donald Trump said and later posted on Truth, quote, "This persecution is being done by the same weaponized agencies that for 7 years have been running illegal psychological warfare campaigns against the American people, much of it as if they were trying to destabilize a foreign country." From the Russia hoax to the no collusion Mueller witch hunt to impeachment hoax number 1, impeachment hoax number 2, the 51 lying intelligence agents, etc., unquote. We have endured the past 7 years being relentlessly strafed by psychological operations deployed by bureaucrats in our government, whose salaries we pay, and by their agents in the state media. These are the same people who have expertly executed color revolutions and overthrown governments worldwide. And now they're doing it here, to us, to you, with the tax that they take from the sweat of your brow. And they're not stopping. Their primary weapons are informational, cyber, algorithmic, and psychological. And while they've been doing this to us, similar fifth-generational warfare models have been deployed in most other countries around the world. We are in a covert world war using fifth-generational warfare tactics. These Trotskyite agents of the planetary banking cartel scream about the rules-based order and about our democracy, but in reality, they are criminal thugs who hate free elections and who seek to impoverish, to enslave, and to kill us. The most challenging part of this is getting your head around it and achieving situational awareness, especially because very often the enemy is not just domestic, but it has parked itself inside your head or inside the heads of your loved ones with false assumptions and beliefs stemming from the unceasing propaganda and mass mind control, such that perhaps you, your friends and family have already been conquered by the enemy and are acting on behalf of the enemy without even knowing it. In order to win this war, we need to understand the enemy, the theater, and the arsenal. The administrative state of federal employees, these careers in the bureaucracy, especially in the State Department, these are your enemies. They are overthrowing the United States as if it were Iran, Congo, Guatemala, Vietnam, Brazil, Chile, Iraq, Syria, or Ukraine. They've gotten good at what they do over the past 80 years. And here's what Steve Bannon and Ultra MAGA Party had to say about it. Watch.
The Praetorian Guard in February of 2020 selected Joe Biden. They hid information that's treasonous, right? Not just disqualifying for running, but treasonous. They hid information, they buried it, and they selected him. Rudy and Bob Costello could have gone to a grand jury and brought indictments, criminal indictments. That's where forget this Trump stuff. That's all nonsense.
If even half of it is true, then he's toast. It's a very detailed indictment, and it's very, very...
Bill Barr, you can sit up there and say it's a great case. We're going to shove this up ass, okay? We're going to shove it up your ass.
And this idea of presenting Trump as a victim here, or a victim of a witch hunt, is ridiculous.
You are freaking guilty of treason.
No doubt further disappointing President Trump. The Attorney General said there's no need for a new prosecutor to See the investigation under Biden, which has been going on for 2 years.
I have no reason to appoint a special counsel, and I have no plan to do so before I leave. I did not support Trump for the nomination. I supported Jeb Bush.
You're guilty of treason and Ray's guilty of treason. You had this information, and we can prove you had it in December of 2019 when Bernie Sanders was on a roll and Elizabeth Warren was on a roll. Bernie Sanders is a con artist, and here's why. Hey, Bernie, go to Garrett Ziegler's site and get your staff briefed by Garrett Ziegler, and then I want you to call Ray. You control the Senate. Call Ray and call Bill Barr in there and ask them, hey, when I was kind of leading the polls back in November, December of 2019, you guys had this information. What Garrett Ziegler's got up online came to you.
I can't talk about the specifics of that investigation other than to assure everyone.
Joe Biden in February of 2020 finished what, fourth? You finished fourth and fifth, you're done. They had the goods on him. He was selected. This is like the Roman Empire. He was selected by the Praetorian Guard. They protected him.
So it's with great honor and humility, I accept this nomination for President of the United States of America.
Why didn't any of this come forward? Bernie Sanders, don't give me any more smack talk about what you're going to do and you're going to do this, you're going to run, you're all this, you're old feckless hack.
I would certainly continue the campaign, but it's just not there.
He called on his supporters to play nice.
It is absolutely not my view that Joe is corrupt in any way.
If you got the stones, call Ray and call Barr and say, why didn't you put this out? Why didn't anybody know this? Why didn't the Democrat campaigns know this? Because the Praetorian Guard selected the Bidens. They selected the Bidens and protected the Bidens, just like in the fall of the Roman Republic. This is why you have the timing of this. It just matters you stand with President Trump now, and we're going on offense.
And it's great that Michael Flynn released his book about fifth generation warfare, because the more we are able to identify and name what's being done to us while it's happening, the less power that these information operations will have over us. We need to understand that the military-grade orchestrated gaslighting and psychological operations to which we are being subjected by our demonic bureaucrats at the DOD, FBI, HHS, CDC, FDA, DOJ, FBI, DHS, and CISA, and behind the January 6th committee, in concert with the fake news media, are a scaled-up version of a torture technique developed for interrogations described in a manual published by the National Defense Intelligence College in 2006 entitled EDUCING Information, Interrogation, Science, and Art. In a chapter called Alice in Wonderland, The Power of Applied Confusion, quote, Alice in Wonderland, the power of applied confusion. The aim of the Alice in Wonderland or confusion technique is to confound the expectations and conditioned reactions of the interrogatee. He is accustomed to a world that makes sense, or at least to him, a world of continuity and logic, a predictable world. He clings to this world to reinforce his identity and powers of resistance. The confusion technique is designed not only to obliterate the familiar, but to replace it with the weird. And as the process continues day after day as necessary, the subject begins to try to make sense of the situation, which becomes mentally intolerable. And he is likely to make significant admissions or even to pour out his story, unquote. This manual cites an earlier 1963 torture manual entitled Kubark Counterintelligence Interrogation Manual, Human Resource Exploitation Training Manual, which was based on CIA research, much of it conducted through the MKUltra program, but some of it going all the way back to the Spanish Inquisition of the 1300s. In other words, what we're being put through is quite literally torture. The purpose of this technique is not just to obliterate the normal, but to replace that which is normal with the mind-bogglingly bizarre. So the person goes into a state of deep trauma that is so awful, they would rather give up their secrets and return to a reality that makes sense than to continue with more of this. The unrelenting fake news, the Mueller investigation, the fake impeachment, Christine Blasey Ford, Jussie Smollett, and the fake media crucifixion of Nick Sandmann were illogical, orchestrated psyops, together with the transgender push, are designed to badger everyone into agreement in order to just make it stop. We've understood that this was unconventional warfare, but knowing that it's called Alice in Wonderland technique empowers you to identify it when it's happening. Alice in Wonderland, to help you distance yourself from the fragmentation and the cognitive dissonance that it is attempting to induce with this ceaseless encroachment of your boundaries. We need to understand that, for example, shoving the trans thing down our throats is not an organic thing that's springing up from within the populace. It's an influence operation. It is psychological warfare. It is meant to confuse children and to destabilize our society like this.
Tonight, the White House at the center of the latest Pride Month controversy.
Welcome to the White House.
Thank you. Saying transgender activist Rose Montoya is now barred from future events. It all happened at what was the largest Pride celebration in White House history.
Happy Pride Month.
Montoya posting a reel on Instagram showing her at the event, shaking hands and posing for selfies with the president.
Hi, Mr. President. It is an honor.
Then, after Biden moved on, Montoya standing next to two transgender men who had surgically removed their breasts, all posing topless on the White House lawn. Critics taking to the internet in outrage. The White House then responding, saying the behavior was inappropriate and disrespectful.
It was unfair to the hundreds of attendees who were there to celebrate their families. It really does not reflect the event that we hosted.
Adding that those in the video will not be invited to future events. But Montoya taking to TikTok to defend her actions.
I would just like to say that, first of all, going topless in Washington, D.C. is legal. Why is my chest now deemed inappropriate or illegal when I show it off? However, before coming out as trans, it was not. I had zero intention of trying to be vulgar or be profane in any way.
And while the Biden regime is doing that to American children, the Chinese Communist regime is doing this to their children. Watch.
那你最讨厌的国呢？
就是那个美国和日本。
这么讨厌啊？为什么呢？
准备好了没有？我是好了还是坏的我都可。中华要灭亡！无奈先死绝。
上马杀敌，战斗指示，敌不打开加战，红王旗强大的火力。 与南方对峙，上马杀敌。
那你长大了想干什么呢？
想杀日本人，想杀美国人啊！有一回我恨得流鼻血。
Something very, very, very scary is going down in China right now, and I can't for the life of me figure out why nobody in the West is talking about this. Why is nobody talking about the fact that on a mass scale, China, under the current leadership of Xi Jinping, taking on this big nationalist approach, is training its kids for war?
Understanding the manipulations will help you assert your cognitive boundaries and will help you to protect yourself from these incessant fifth-generation warfare attacks, because, friends, it's not going to stop. We may be living like this for the rest of our lives, so we need to learn how to survive the jive and power through. And we'll be looking at some of the highlights of the information war this week when we come back after this short break.
The world is about to shift. Banks are going cashless globally with the emergence of central bank digital currency, which will bring with it programmable money and the ability to turn on or off your purchasing power based on your digital social profile. Spyware in your bank account. You need to get the system with the world's safest and most private assets, silver and gold. Call Kirk Elliott, PhD, 720-605-3900.
Welcome back to Forbidden News. So we're going to run through some of the top stories of the week, including the various oversight hearings and the analyses of the experts, starting with departing CDC Director Rochelle Walensky testifying before the House Select Subcommittee on the coronavirus pandemic, and then the reaction of Dr. Naomi Wolf. Watch.
The vaccine did not stop spread or infection. I'm not saying it was completely bad, but it did not stop the spread or infection.
I think actually, if I could actually just correct that point, and that is initially it did. For the Wuhan strain and for the Alpha strain, all of the early data and the literature published in the New England Journal demonstrated that for those who worked, if you didn't get infected, that you were not transmitting it to other people, and it had very high efficacy early on, up to 96%. So it did change over time.
Okay, Dr. Naomi Wolf, am I seeing perjured testimony there? What was that about?
You are seeing perjured testimony, for sure. And she knows it. I mean, it's not an accident. She claimed, I watched her presentation to Congress 2 days ago in its entirety, multiple times. Well, she perjured herself in two distinct ways twice. Once, as you saw, she asserted that early on in the rollout of the vaccine, 5% effective, and that studies showed that it was 95% effective. And as you all recall, we all lived through this. All the spokespeople, all the way up to the White House, were claiming again and again that it was 95% effective initially, in order to justify these mandates and these coercive measures and to get shots in arms. Over time, they scaled it down, 90% effective, 80% effective, waning efficacy, time for a booster. But she categorically stated as late as April of 2021 that it was 95% effective. Well, she knew she was lying, and she knew in front of Congress that she was lying because two things. First of all, Report 74 of the War Room Daily Clout Pfizer documents analysis volunteers, and she has these Pfizer documents. The CDC has these documents that went to the FDA. She knows the conclusions. They're government's conclusions that were the basis of government's actions and government talking points. She knows that, as Report 74 found, in order to reach that 95% effective statement, what Pfizer did was they dropped 200 infected people who had been vaccinated from the study.
And next we have FBI Deputy Director Paul Abate at the Senate Judiciary Committee hearing, stonewalling Senator Ted Cruz and getting hammered by same. Watch.
Free scheme.
Deputy Director Abate, is it true that the FBI has a report making those allegations?
I'm not going to comment on that, Senator.
And why is that?
I'm just not going to comment on information we received, investigations.
Do you owe an obligation to the American people to be candid about evidence of corruption by the President of the United States?
This is an area that I'm not going to get into with you, Senator.
Well, I understand you don't want to, and that's why people are mad at the FBI, because you're stonewalling and covering up serious allegations of evidence of corruption.
Brooke Seaman has more on this. Brooke.
Hey, good morning, guys. That's right. FBI Deputy Director Paul Abate facing intense scrutiny from Cruz about the Burisma executive who claims he gave President Biden $5 million. An FBI report says that executive has 2 audio recordings of conversations he had with then Vice President Joe Biden and 15 with his son, Hunter. Now, House Majority Leader Steve Scalise has promised to make those recordings public, telling the Daily Mail, quote, "We're going to press to get everything we can out. We're going to keep digging."
And here is Senator Josh Hawley yesterday accusing the DHS of facilitating the slavery of illegal migrant children. And then Alex Jones putting things in proper perspective, that the DHS isn't facilitating anything. It is actively running the largest human trafficking operation in modern times. Watch.
Scalp, the factory was full of underage workers like Carolina who'd crossed the southern border by themselves, vulnerable, now spending late nights bent over hazardous machinery.
All right, we're going to go to the full clip of Senator Josh Hawley coming up
next segment, but I wanted to just introduce part of it. It goes on for another 5 minutes or so because he's dead on, but he's really lying by omission. And I'm not saying he's a liar. I'm just saying if you don't tell the whole story, you are lessening it. He didn't say Biden told them to surge the border. Biden, starting with Obama, allows people to get in if they have kids with them. That it's the direct policies that are running this. He just says DHS is dodging your responsibility and the FBI is dodging their responsibility. They're not dodging it. They're doing it. And that's a big difference. It's one thing to allow crime to go on and not do your job. That's bad enough. But to be running it is a totally different animal. And then he's there, oh, the New York Times, thank you so much. You admit all this child labor is going on. Like we're reading The Jungle or something. Ladies and gentlemen, the Senate report from 8 years ago confirmed over 10,000 small children put into sex slavery, many of them killed. That was under Obama. Trump shut it down. So I don't blame the average DHS person. They have a terrible job to do, and they're being asked to facilitate all this. But the people on top aren't just turning a blind eye. They're running the damn thing.
Senators Hawley and Cruz and others have performed these amazing oratories at these hearings over the past couple of years. And it's nice that Congresswomen Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, and others are moving to impeach Joe Biden. But there's more than enough evidence showing that many members of the Biden regime have broken hundreds of laws and that they should be arrested. But of course, who's going to do that? Our entire federal government is hard at work at destabilizing and collapsing their own country. For over 2 years, Darren Beatty at Revolver.News and journalists at the Gateway Pundit have been trying to get the FBI to release information about the January 6th pipe bomber, who was caught on video planting pipe bombs near the headquarters of both the Republican and Democrat Party headquarters on the evening of January 5th. The bomber has thus far managed to evade the so-called greatest intelligence agency in the world. Spurred by whistleblower disclosure from a senior FBI official who claimed that the FBI was withholding information on the investigation, Representatives Jim Jordan, Andy Biggs, and Bill Posey sent a letter to the FBI demanding an update on the case of the J6 pipe bomber. And now, former Washington FBI Field Office Chief Stephen D'Antuono has admitted that the FBI could not use the phone data of one provider on January 5th, 2021 because it was corrupted. How convenient. D'Antuono has also admitted in the letter that the bombs were inoperable. In other words, it appears that Black Ops erased the digital trail left behind by unknown federal agents who acted as the J6 bomber and the support for that. As the Gateway Pundit's Jim Hobbs commented, the pipe bomber was, quote, likely just a propaganda operation used to attack Trump and another assault on conservative Americans. And then the Halderman report on the Dominion voting machines in the state of Georgia were finally released after corrupt Obama judge had put them under seal. The report confirms that votes can be altered in the Dominion voting machines and that the Dominion software can be hacked. But corrupt Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, of course, has no plans to do anything about this because he wants to be able to hack the voting machines. Raffensperger's brother, by the way, is a high-up executive at Huawei who lives in Shenzhen, China. And in other news, JP Morgan Chase reached a tentative $290 million settlement with sexual abuse victims of Jeffrey Epstein. The government of the U.S. Virgin Islands is managing Epstein's estate, and it was they who brought the lawsuit against JP Morgan, who in turn claimed that the former First Lady of the U.S. Virgin Islands, Cecile de Jong, had assisted Jeffrey Epstein in trafficking young women and girls to the territory for an annual salary of $150,000. There are reports from Rudy Giuliani and confirmed by others that the Burisma whistleblower was both the top accountant and the wife of the former owner of Burisma, Nicola Lisin. And she was found dead before she could testify after Mikola himself had also passed away under mysterious circumstances. So there's a lot going on, and when we come back, we're going to take a look at what they're doing to distract us.
Hey guys, Justin here with the Satellite Phone Store, and today we're going to talk about EcoFlow's solar panel options. Designed for portable power, these foldable solar panels come with a kickstand case for easy transportation, setup, and protection. Each panel uses an MC4 universal connector for wider compatibility and makes it super useful for charging a variety of devices. And if you're interested in making a purchase or you'd like more information, please visit satellitephonestore.com or sat123.com.
What should people know about that whole blow up with Project Veritas?
I read a few people wrong, and that's my fault, but I learned from that, and I think I'll be a more effective messenger as a result of that. That'll free me up to do the next chapter, the next stage of my evolution, which is OMG, which is decentralizing journalism, and sometimes things happen for a reason. That's my goal, that's my mission, and I didn't ask for that mission. I never thought that would be my mission. It just has become my mission, and I'm excited about it.
Welcome back to Forbidden News. Earlier this week, Dr. Stephen Greer held a bombshell event at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C., in which he introduced whistleblower Eric Hecker, who had worked for a Raytheon contractor at the South Pole Station in Antarctica. And Greg Reese created this excellent video about his revelations. Watch.
During World War II, the Nazis' most classified project was known as Die Glock, the bell. Secret documents found years later reveal that the bell was a new kind of exotic energy technology that could affect time and defy gravity. In 1939, the Nazis set up a secret base in Antarctica known as New Swabia. Starting in 1945, Operation Paperclip secretly brought hundreds of Nazi scientists into America, where they were hired by the military-industrial complex. In 1946, Admiral Richard Byrd led a military expedition known as Operation High Jump to seek out Nazi base New Swabia and other Antarctica bases. On his way back to the U.S., Admiral Byrd told Chilean newspaper El Mercurio that in the event of a new war, the U.S. would be facing military craft that can fly from one pole to the other with incredible speed. In 1959, a dozen nations signed the Antarctic Treaty, making it illegal for anyone to travel south of the 60th parallel without government permission. Since then, curious videos have circulated that show what appear to be Nazi UFOs. And just last Monday, Dr. Stephen Greer introduced Antarctica whistleblower Eric Hecker.
In 2010, I was selected to go down to the South Pole Station in Antarctica for an entire year by Raytheon Polar Services as an employee of a third-party contractor for the National Science Foundation. I function in a dual-role capacity as a tradesman and a firefighter. My responsibilities required me to be more informed than most of my crew and offered me complete access to the facilities. What I learned from this unique experience needs to be shared with the entire world. The technology at the South Pole Station certainly can do what it is presented as its primary purposes, and unfortunately, much more. The IceCube neutrino detector is presented as a passive listening device for the purposes of the science as presented, but I'm going to skip right through the chase, folks. I have provided documentation that proves that the 5,160, what they call DOMs, that are embedded in the ice can actually transmit at 2,047 volts each. That gives us a long list of things to consider. It is effectively a multifaceted directed energy weapons platform.
And that's all the time we've got today. For more on today's stories and for more stories like this, visit my website, ForbiddenKnowledgeTV.net, where you can subscribe for free, and I will see you next week.